In this video, I'm going to take a moment and reflect on the implications Flat Earth has for our understanding of reincarnation. Back in 2015, I crossed paths with a raft of challenges to my then existent belief that Earth is a sphere that orbits the Sun in the vastness of outer space. Back then, little did I know that coming across something that challenged my core indoctrinated belief would take me on a journey that would not only answer many of my questions about why we're here and the nature of our potential, but it would also expose me to monumental lies in the story about afterlife most of us have been told. And of course, it would leave me with a new set of unanswered questions. Think of yourself as a writer. You're writing a manuscript for a screenplay about life, not as we perceive it, but as it is. You've done research on the theme, you've chosen the characters, and have decided the roles they would play, and have a pretty good idea how significant or insignificant each character's role would be. Now you begin to write the manuscript. This is a screenplay about life. If we want to discuss life, we can logically conclude where we live is an important, if not fundamental, part of this discussion. Your role as a writer is to break presuppositions and create a palatable journey for your audience. Since this is a screenplay about life and where we live is fundamental to the discussion, Flat Earth is the main character. So now, the screenplay is about Flat Earth. You thought you researched the theme. You thought you researched the characters. You have this stubborn and unrelenting confidence that you can actually write this manuscript and even have a beginning and an end. Or so you thought. Your main character suddenly forms multiple personalities and becomes highly confused about who they really are. As a writer, you decide to turn the main character into one of the personalities of the main character. Problem solved, right? Not so fast. The personality you've adopted has suddenly warmed up to other characters, immersed themselves into a crowd of like-minded individuals, and these like-minded individuals have banded together and they're chanting this mantra, all is one is all, you are one, and you are all. This is my story about Flat Earth and reincarnation. They're inseparable characters in a manuscript for a screenplay about life. There's a common thread in stories we're told about afterlife. This rings true across a whole spectrum of cultures, religions, spiritual practices, and belief systems. The stories about afterlife not only stipulate our existence in this physical earth realm is finite, the chapter that precedes it involves judgment, appeal to a greater authority, and choices that are made for you by someone other than yourself. In order for the story to be effective, it needs to set the stage for rendering the believer, or I would like to call them the victim of this tale, as being insignificant, inconsequential to the universe, and dispensable. This is easier done than said, and here's how. First of all, the stage is set by convincing the captive audience that knowledge about their existence is external and comes from people who proclaim this authority over the knowledge. Depending on what is most appropriate to the social, cultural, religious, political, and spiritual landscape of the people to whom this story is told, proclaimed authority figures can take the forms of either priests, scientists, teachers, shaman, so-called thought leaders, and even celebrities. Once a captive audience is convinced that this knowledge is external and is held by this proclaimed authority figure, the building blocks for this fairy tale are beginning to be laid. The tale can begin with a concept of this Big Bang, an explosion that occurred from nothing and cannot be tested or proven through any scientific means, by the way. Powerful visual imagery of this explosion can accompany the story to make it more real to the captive audience. From this explosion, there emerged a ball of fire surrounded by rocks that orbited it in a vast vacuum. And over the course of billions of years, one of these rocks cooled off, and upon it, there existed conditions for what we understand today as biological life forms. This is already beginning to sound funny. These life forms start out as simple, soulless conglomerations of molecules that eventually turned into cells. They increased in complexity and turned into organisms until one day the final product is this misplaced and perhaps unintentionally created human being with a soul that needs to succumb to external authority to understand its existence. Once these building blocks are laid, the story of the afterlife can be crafted to suit the individual. Many flavors of the story are available, but all of them steer us toward this self-image of being an inconsequential being in a vast, expansive universe. Often, the story uses grammars and vocabularies that disguise those very terms. I was once a part of that captive audience until I came across Flat Earth. Once my understanding of where we live and how we got here was challenged, all bets on the rest of the fairy tale were off. Flat Earth in this case has both very little and a lot to do with understanding reincarnation. On the surface, the form and shape of Earth is not the center of attention, but the deception that has been pulled over us is finally exposed. And once it's exposed, are you inclined to trust the stories or explanations about reincarnation that are being offered to you by the same people who try to convince you that water sticks to a ball, that you are here by accident, that humans are inconsequential to the universe? I think not. So let's set aside the form and shape of this place we live for a sec. Let's set aside the globe deception for a moment. Let's begin to think about what makes sense to us. Our senses and observations tell us that we inhabit this fixed, stationary realm. We can't feel movement or spin in any way, shape, and form. We can observe the stars spinning above us, and we can identify Polaris, the North Star, as the center of this expanse of celestial luminaries. We can see Polaris and simultaneously look at the needle of a compass. The needle points to Polaris, which is north. Ancient cosmological models confirm this configuration. When we refer to either Norse cosmology, Hindu cosmology, Hebrew cosmology, Navajo cosmology, or Aztec cosmology, Earth is depicted as a fixed stationary plane with a center that bears this incredibly divine significance. The Norse referred to the center as the axis mundi. The presence of Mount Meru also resonates through several of these models. The Gnostics perhaps understood these models at much greater amplitude and with much greater detail and complexity. Much of this understanding resonates through their story of creation. Sophia, the mother goddess, set forth the black sun, which resides at the center of the physical earth plane. The black sun is the center of creation, or in simplified, and I emphasize overly simplified vernacular, it is the source of our creation. The axis mundi, for all intents and purposes, is in fact the Garden of Eden. We were created to be our own gods and goddesses. We were equipped with the ability to manifest our own realities. But all of this comes with a caveat. The powers that we were created with could only come into fruition once we embrace Sophia, or Earth. Sophia is the mother goddess that symbolizes Earth. Many, many incarnations ago, we were well aware of this. However, we are by our very nature poised to allow the antithesis of the dualistic counterpart of what we bring to our thoughts and manifestations. We therefore created archons. We created these external gods or external conjectures of authority and order as a way of expressing the influence of our dualistic counterpart. As our incarnations passed, we allowed Saturnian influences such as time, order, process, and boundaries to become a fundamental component of our existence. We created these authoritative superstructures that entrench us deeper and deeper into systems of control that instill within us a disconnectedness from Earth. One cannot understand heaven until they understand hell. One can't conceive of the virtues of being ascended without understanding the dismal and cataclysmic deaths of having fallen immensely. A growing number of us are at that point in our lives right now. We have a clear picture as to which end of the pendulum we do not want to occupy. So, do we accept the story of our existence and the story of life and death we've been told, or do we move toward this realization of our origin, our potential, and our true destiny? Embracing the story of life and the existence of biological death places one in the book of death. If you find yourself in the book of death, you will eventually be visited by the angel of death. You will embark on a trip to the moon and encounter an archonic avatar you created to send you back to the physical earth plane to live your life again. The choice is yours. Death is a choice, and so is eternal life. In the absence of the flat earth awakening, our potential stands limited to the karmic cycle. On a globe earth, there is no black sun. Sophia is relegated to an inconsequential New Age deity. The Garden of Eden remains this mythical place somewhere in Mesopotamia, and the north pointing compass directs you to a magnetic point that is told to us to be in a vastly different place than true north. Well, these nuances are intended to obscure us from the realization of the nature of who we are, why we're here, and what we have the capacity to become. Moving beyond the globe earth deception is only one step in a larger and more convoluted journey. If you focus on the shape of the earth, the people and organizations behind the deception, the structure of this so-called conspiracy, you will not realize the power you have to change this. Many of us have crossed paths with the Flat Earth Awakening and have done so as dead souls. I was one of them. As a dead soul, it may be easy to find yourself stuck on the deception and not moving beyond it. The power is in your hands. Being a dead soul is a choice, just as death is a choice. If you want to awaken or activate your soul, you need to find the path and stay the course. The Flat Earth Awakening itself isn't going to get you there. Remember, the universe is you. You have been instrumental in creating everything about this reality. You're also instrumental in understanding what needs to be changed and being that change itself. Change doesn't occur amidst dualism. It doesn't occur by waging battles and exposing deceivers or seeking a different form of leadership. Change doesn't occur when you use mechanisms that are designed to keep you at bay in the same place and feeling exhausted and often broken. Change occurs when you have the paper and the pen in your hands. You have the life story you want to write and the intent to bring it to fruition. Let's face it, most of us have written a life story we weren't content with because we were learning how to write and we're making a ton of mistakes and growing along the way. Writing is intuitive, but it's also refined through trial and error. Be the writer you want to be and write the reality you want to see. That's all for now. Be well, sun gaze, and reject fear.